Have a quick look at these recent ads. What do you see? Beautiful models selling jeans. Maybe you wouldn't normally give any of this a second glance, but let's look more carefully. Because no one in these pictures, not a single soul, is human. All of these people were created by artificial intelligence. An entire Levi's campaign of models without paying for models. And the internet seems annoyed.
The internet is very angry at this model.
It's not the only campaign giving this a go, and just maybe this is the future. Artificial intelligence so woven into our lives, we don't even notice it.
So the conversation about AI often starts with the novelty of ChatGPT. We talk a lot about that, but there are more subversive ways AI is creeping in, and just because you don't always recognize it doesn't mean it's harmless or has no consequences. So let's pull back this curtain a little bit. What is happening? What do we need to think about? Sinead Bovell is a former model and current futurist. I have a lot of questions about that job. And Yoshua Bengio is a Canadian computer scientist, one of 20,000 tech leaders who signed a letter calling for a pause in AI development so the world can talk about how to regulate this space. I want to get to that in a moment. But if we can start with these AI models, these AI avatars. Sinead, forgive me here, but beyond actual people losing work, what's the problem with it?
Right, so outside of just the automation that this means for the industry, there's an added layer of complexity when there might be a bit of a difference between the identities of the people being automated and the identities of those controlling those avatars or AI-generated people. So who has the right to control the identities that these AI models will represent? And should there be some sort of connection? Or does this open up new layers and avenues for exploitation, a new world of kind of robot cultural appropriation, so to speak?
Robot cultural appropriation. Can you explain that a little bit?
Right. So in kind of traditional terms, when a non-dominant group, or when a dominant group takes elements from a less dominant group and derives commercial benefit from it, we usually call that cultural appropriation. In a world with AI and avatars, that can become incredibly complicated. So if a white male, for example, owns and profits off of an AI-generated model who happens to be Black and female, is that an avenue for cultural appropriation in the digital age?
Okay, and Yoshua, if we're talking about the fashion industry, just as an example here, and maybe even makeup, this is another place where AI avatars are everywhere. It is tough enough on your self-esteem to look at a perfectly photoshopped human, but at least you can reality check that, fact check that. Where is the potential for trouble with AI's place in those spheres?
They can easily invent new people that not only not exist, but maybe are not even like plausible. I mean, sometimes models you think are not plausible either, but it could be worsened. And so, yeah, these are asking difficult questions that we'll need to grapple with.
And in specific terms, for you at night, you know, when you go to sleep, what is it specifically about AI that can keep you staring at the ceiling? What are the scenarios that concern you?
Well, I'm worried for the stability of our societies. I'm worried about these tools being used to influence people. I mean, people are already very influential, and we've seen with social media the effect of trolls and so on. But imagine those trolls at a massive scale, so it's not limited by the number of people who can be behind a keyboard. And
Sinead, you know, you're a futurist. I realize AI is with us right now, but best case scenario, so the flip side of this, in 5 years, how do you see it changing our lives?
Hopefully, artificial intelligence is primarily a tool that's used to benefit humanity. It transforms healthcare and medicine and pharmaceuticals. It transforms education. It can be applied to climate change and sustainability. We can achieve a lot of great new ideas and new explorations in space. There's a whole host of ways that this technology can really be on the right side of history and build a future that works for all of us, or for at least most of us. But that's not something we're going to just arrive at without careful choice, without continuing to have societal conversations and making sure it's not just a few people speaking on behalf of everyone.
So that's interesting. You talked about being careful, but this is an unregulated space. I mean, I think of it in terms of almost outer space where no one is actually in charge up there. And I suppose, Yoshua, that's where this letter comes in that you and some 20,000 other people signed, calling for this pause. I'm trying to figure out why some of the biggest companies in the world that are in AI would agree to a pause when they're operating in this sort of tantalizing, unregulated space.
Well, they might agree together because I think the human beings behind those companies and the AI researchers, many of them, I'm pretty sure, would welcome rules of the game that make a level playing field, that raise the bar on ethics and public protection. But if there is no regulation and no agreement, coordination between these companies, then it's a race to the bottom. That's why we need an acceleration of the efforts to regulate, and that's what we're essentially calling for.
I hear what you're saying, Yoshua, but who can anyone hold accountable right now for what AI might be doing?
Well, we already do these things in other sectors of society. People who build airplanes are accountable when something goes wrong, and they have to document what they're doing, how they build the planes, how they make them safe, and the same thing could be done in AI. It's just that it hasn't been done before. And by the way, Canada is probably going to be the first country to have a legislation that goes in this direction. And the legislation that's proposed actually has very nice features. It's flexible, it's adaptive, it's principles-based, and something that would be more difficult in the US, which means that the regulation can adapt quickly when new dangers appear.
Yeah, I think we have frameworks already. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry, R&D is encouraged, but when it comes to products interacting with humans and with citizens, there are protocols and steps of procedure that have to be followed, and there's a lot of spots of guidelines and regulation. So I think we have these models and frameworks. It's just about applying them now to this emerging sector of AI.
All right, Sinead Bovell and Yoshua Bengio, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.